They said I was too young. They said I didn't have the courage. The world's media labeled me just another African leader making empty threats. Israeli intelligence dismissed me as a naive soldier. Even my closest allies whispered doubts about my decisions. Too fast, too dangerous, too reckless. But they couldn't have been more wrong. While they underestimated me, I was silently dismantling their entire network of control, piece by piece. What I'm about to reveal isn't just the story of Burkina Faso. It's the blueprint for how Africa is reclaiming its destiny, breaking free from decades of exploitation. My name is Ibrahim Traoré, and this is the moment I declared war on an empire built on Africa's silence. Let me start with a truth they don't want you to hear. For 15 years, while African leaders signed treaties, shook hands for photo ops, and smiled for the cameras, Benjamin Netanyahu was quietly laying the foundation for something far more sinister. A web of surveillance, intelligence operations, and corporate manipulation spanning from Lagos to Nairobi. They thought we were too desperate, too poor, too fractured to notice. They thought we wouldn't fight back. But I saw everything. What triggered my decision 3 weeks ago wasn't just a spark, it was an awakening. My intelligence chief walked in with a folder that would change everything. Inside were intercepted communications, satellite imagery, and financial records that shook me to my core. These weren't just business operations. They were tactical, military-grade systems designed to map our resources, track our citizens, and compromise our sovereignty. They weren't just spying on us, they were exploiting us. That night I sat alone in my office, the weight of the truth bearing down on me. At dawn, I made the only decision I could make. I called my commanders and I said, "Operation Clear Sight begins in 2 hours. No leaks, no delays, no mercy." By 7 a.m., my forces moved swiftly, hitting 17 targets across the city. The first raid took us to a telecommunications company on the edge of Ouagadougou. From the outside, it seemed like any other office, a few employees, some glass windows. But inside, it was a different story. The evidence was chilling. Server rooms designed to monitor half the continent, data on over 2 million Burkina-based citizens, encrypted lines straight to Tel Aviv intelligence. This wasn't just business, it was an invasion. By 9 a.m., we had raided 6 more locations tied to Israeli operations, but these weren't just companies. They were intelligence hubs disguised as tech firms, NGOs, and humanitarian groups. The evidence was undeniable, but I knew it wouldn't be enough. The world needed to see action. At noon, I stood before the cameras and declared, "Africa is no longer your laboratory. We are no longer your test subjects. We are no longer your blind spot." Those words weren't just for my people. They were a message to Netanyahu, who was probably scrambling to control the fallout. Within hours, something remarkable began to unfold. Leaders across West Africa reached out, Mali, Guinea, and others, offering unwavering support, sharing their own findings of foreign infiltration and covert operations within their borders. The ripple effect of our actions spread quickly, as African leaders realized that the time had come for unity and action. The African Union, for the first time, publicly discussed a unified strategy to defend our digital sovereignty and safeguard the integrity of our nations from foreign encroachment. But this was never just about one country. The evidence revealed something far more sinister, a network of intelligence services from Israel, France, the UK, and the United States, all working in tandem. For decades, our data had been treated as a commodity, mined, extracted, and exploited for the benefit of foreign powers. Our resources were not only physical but digital, and they had been treated as nothing more than raw material to be plundered. This moment of realization marked the turning point. We were fighting more than just espionage. We were fighting against a colonial mindset that had never truly ended. It had only adapted, evolving from overt military presence to the covert power of technology, surveillance, and data manipulation. 2 days later, I received a call from Netanyahu trying to salvage what was left of his government's reputation. "President Traoré, I believe there's been a misunderstanding," he said, his voice calm yet defensive. I didn't hesitate for a moment. "The only misunderstanding," I replied firmly, "was thinking we wouldn't notice the manipulation and exploitation of our people's data." The conversation didn't last long. It was clear to both of us that the truth was now undeniable. The damage was done, and there was no way to reverse the course that had been set. Our operation had done more than expose Israel's activities. It had ignited a larger movement, one that would reshape the way Africa engaged with the world. Our mission wasn't just about exposing Israel's role, it was about reclaiming Africa's digital sovereignty and affirming our place in the global order. And the world, including those who had long held Africa in a subservient position, was starting to notice. Within weeks, countries across the continent were following our lead. Morocco, Nigeria, Kenya, all began reassessing their digital policies and practices, realizing the need to protect their own data and infrastructure. These nations were no longer accepting foreign interference as the norm. They were demanding respect, transparency, and fairness in their partnerships. This wasn't just a victory for Burkina Faso, this was the beginning of a new chapter for Africa, a chapter where we no longer remain passive in our dealings with the world, but actively assert our sovereignty and independence. We understood now that we could not afford to stay silent, to remain complicit in agreements that only served the interests of others. Our framework for digital sovereignty, built by Africans for Africans, is the cornerstone of this new era. It ensures that our data stays in Africa. No longer will we allow our resources, our knowledge, and our citizens' privacy to be exploited by foreign entities. We will no longer be treated as a testing ground for foreign agendas. We will demand transparency, respect, and mutual benefit in all our partnerships. We are asserting our right to determine the terms of our digital future. The world has no choice but to adapt. If they can't meet our standards, then they will find that there are plenty of others who will. Africa's demand for sovereignty is no longer negotiable. It is a fundamental right that we will protect at all costs. The lesson is clear. Africa is no longer the silent partner. We choose sovereignty. We choose transparency. We choose our future, and we will not apologize for it. The age of African digital colonialism is over. The question now is not whether other countries will respect African digital sovereignty, but how much it will cost them to learn this lesson. And mark my words, one way or another, they will learn it. The rest of the world must recognize this new reality. Africa is no longer the playground for foreign powers to exploit. We are no longer passive bystanders in a game controlled by others. We are the players now, and we are setting the rules. The choice, as always, is yours. But understand this. Africa has already made its choice. We choose to control our own digital destiny. We choose to protect our citizens, our data, and our resources from exploitation. Everything else is negotiable. Benjamin Netanyahu learned this lesson the hard way, but he won't be the last world leader who has to face the consequences of underestimating Africa's resolve. The future of Africa is ours to shape, and we will not let anyone take that away from us. This is just the beginning. The age of African digital independence has arrived. It is time for the world to adapt, and we will be watching.